Hello and welcome to Filmi Ladies. Today we're talking about Murder Mubarak and there will be spoilers. So if you have not seen this Netflix mystery yet, turn this off, go watch it, and then come back and join us for a very full discussion of this film, which also falls into our category of book adaptations. I have not read this book. Have you?
No. Mm-mm.
No. So I knew nothing going in except, oh, here's Pankaj Tripathi again, because he is in every streaming thing and no one makes fun of that like they do of Radhika Apte, which I feel is sexist and baloney. I'm always happy to see Pankaj Tripathi, but here he is. I would like to talk about his performance, but we'll get there. Um, First question. You and I are both on record in this podcast as saying mysteries often work well for us because we're not paying attention to things like clues and we're paying attention to things like sets and clothing and things like that, and maybe performances and vibe and all that. But did
Yeah.
this work for you as a mystery?
Um, yes and no. I
Okay.
kind of had for once in my life, I had actually figured out who the killer was, but
Aha.
it is not because I've suddenly become very intelligent since the last whodunit I watched. It is only because they give so much screen time to this one person that I was like, this person has to be the murderer because
Yeah.
they are focusing on them so much.
Yeah.
And so I was proven correct in that regard. It I'm kind of getting disappointed with Homie Ajania because I love being
Mm.
Cyrus so much. And I feel like that's like his big like calling card. And then everything else is just like wee. So it kind of worked for me. I enjoyed it. I will say I very much enjoyed it, but it did not pass the cell phone test, not one bit.
No.
5 minutes in, I was scrolling Instagram.
Mm.
Um, did the mystery part work for you? Did you guess who the killer was?
I did, but not until fairly late. But
Same.
I wasn't trying to a whole lot. I watch a ton of mystery shows, mostly British ones. Um, but that has not helped me be a better imaginary crime solver at all. But maybe if I applied myself, I could be a better fictional detective. But no, not really. I was just kind of letting it wash over me. I enjoyed this very much and have already forgotten it. So I watched it on Friday. Today is Monday, and I remember the basic arc of what happened, but I've forgotten a lot. Um, so I don't know where that would, if I had to give it a rating out of stars, like if you'd asked me right after I finished it, I would have said 4.5 stars. And now I'm like, some stars? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, does it need to be memorable? I mean, can a murder mystery be candy floss? I think it probably can. So for me, this
Yeah.
kind of falls under that. And the mystery was for me sufficiently engaging and intriguing. Um, Partly because I loved the world that they plopped this into. Did you?
I did. I
Yeah.
actually that was the thing that I enjoyed the most
Yeah.
because wouldn't say I've watched a lot of murder mysteries recently, but like two of the things that I saw Vijay Varma in actually. There was Kalkut that I saw him in.
Yeah.
And then, we'd seen him in Darlings and stuff. And then I'd seen The Hard that had Sonakshi Sinha in it. Um, those were very gritty
Yeah.
and they were set in these sort of like, cop environments and small towns and things like that. I loved the glitziness. This
Yeah.
gave me very like Zoya Akhtar vibes. It
Yes.
was very like the cast of Dil Dhadakne Do at their club. Like I could
Hmm.
totally imagine like a Rocky Randhawa type of a character walking in there. So I really enjoyed the glitziness of
Yeah,
it, their
I did
absolute
too.
snobbery. They were insufferable.
Yeah.
But that's what made them funny.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that. I wish there was more Dimple Kapadia though. I was so excited when I
Yes.
saw her with her
Yes.
turquoise glasses, and she was kind of like
Amazing.
channeling Professor Trelawney from the Harry Potter series. Um, and then she was just gone, and I was like, wait, where is Dimple Kapadia? And then
I
Lolo was kind of wasted too.
I wonder if a few scenes of Dimple got cut somehow, because why did you bother getting her for not as much screen time, I felt like. But so as you can, I mean, yeah, I thought she was delightful. Probably some other people could have had just as much fun doing that role and done it as well. But I was very happy to see her. For me, she was channeling sort of Ariadne Oliver from the Poirot stories, because she was sort of bohemian, still incredibly rich and into this
Yeah,
social club, but still, a little more artsy with her
right.
weird sculptures that she makes and her very colorful glasses and stuff. But yeah, I've never been to one of the clubs in Delhi, but I have in Calcutta, and I felt like I felt like even if you've just spent some time in Delhi with your eyes open, you sort of have a sense of this world a little bit. Um, Obviously, actual people from Delhi should comment. I would be very interested to know. And one person I know I saw commenting on Twitter who is a Delhiite was like, this ends the good streak of films set in Delhi or something like that. So I feel
Okay.
like there must be good critique out there. But
Right.
to me, this felt a little bit recognizable, even as a, a tourist who pays attention.
Mhm.
And it's interesting to kind of look at different cultures' snobberies and where they all
Yeah.
and this is a very subculture, obviously.
Yeah.
I think that's fascinating because if you set this in an American country club or whatever the British equivalent is, well, we've
Right.
seen a lot of British mysteries that are set in gentlemen's clubs, for example.
Mhm.
So, this is a type that's out there, and I was really glad to see it in the Indian context. And it wasn't quite the closed room setting of like Dil Dhadakne Do with the ship, but it was pretty closed because all these
Yeah.
people cannot stay away from this place, which is really interesting. Like, what is and Sarah has a bit of a soliloquy about that, about how the club is her
Mhm.
whole life and everything. And it would have been interesting to hear a little bit more of that from some of the other people. Although we do get it some from Sanjay Kapoor's character, who I think I would like to avoid spoilers about him if we can, because I thought
Yeah.
that was probably my favorite part of the film, actually.
Yeah.
Um, but
I actually had a moment where I was like, what is happening? Sanjay Kapoor, a person that I made fun of relentlessly throughout the 90s when I saw him in all his movies, he was so bad. And like now, suddenly, as a
he's really
supporting actor,
good,
I
right?
really enjoy him.
I enjoy him too.
I
And there
don't
was a
understand
there was a
it.
point at which I'm like, do I like him better than I like his brother? And no, but they're very different flavors, obviously. And
Right.
like I know nothing about his early career other than I've seen him kind of in passing in a few things. When your brother is Anil Kapoor, like that's probably hard if you also
Yeah.
want to be an actor and
Especially
your
when they
and your
look
other
so
brother is a
similar.
producer and they do look so similar. So I
Mhm.
get it's probably hard to be him, but and I'm glad he's held on as an actor because I do enjoy him in these kind of character roles. I think he's really good and
Yeah.
he does this sort of this like angry snob, which I feel like he kind of did in Luck by Chance as well, right? The
Yeah.
kind of like, how don't you know who I am? That kind of he
Right.
does that really well, but there's not the mania that his brother sometimes brings, usually very appropriately, as this is not
Right.
but that like high energy thing that Anil Kapoor has, I don't feel that Sanjay has. And I feel like I thought he was really good in this.
He was so good in this,
Yeah.
and then I'd seen him in the Fame game. Have you seen that one? That is
Mm-mm.
also, like, it's streaming, and, it's a Madhuri Dixit show, and she plays this, like, aging heroine, basically,
Oh
and
wait, yes, of
he
course I've seen that. Yes, that was great.
yeah, so he was
Yeah.
really good in that too, as this
He
very, like,
was.
controlling husband, and he's
Hmm.
sort of like, just very toxic and horrible. Like, every time he came on screen, he gave me the shivers, and I
Yeah.
was like, "Why?" So I really enjoyed Sajid Kapoor.
Yeah.
He was the surprise package of this for
Yeah.
me, and, again, I'm gonna go on a 90s tangent where I'm gonna say I just very briefly skimmed through Reddit right after I finished watching this. I didn't want to, read all of the threads because I didn't want too many spoilers beforehand. But there were a lot of people who were criticizing Karishma Kapoor's acting because they were like, it seems like she
Oh,
never left the 90s. And I was like, okay, but I really like her. Have I not left the 90s either? Probably not. Because people were like, oh, she was so over the top and ridiculous and there's no nuance. And I was
she's
like,
supposed to be.
yeah, I was like, she is this like diva person and she has these like hang-ups and everything. And she thinks she's better than everyone else. What could she possibly do that is nuanced? So I couldn't
Yeah.
understand why people were panning her. And I was like, I thought she was great. I wanted to see more of her.
This is an interesting question. Can you be nuanced in a performance of a character who is supposed to be over the top? I'm sure you can, but I felt like she had some I'm not going to full on call them micro expressions. I don't think they were quite micro, but like I felt like there was a lot going on with her face and her
I
gestures
thought so
and
too.
as well as her voice. Like she's someone I've seen very little of. When we get to her in our Superstars series, I mean, I have seen a few of her films, but she doesn't register for me for some reason other than as
Yeah,
a fun dancer. So I thought she did great. And
I
I
know.
love that the description was that what was it? She's a B grade star in C grade films or C
Yeah,
grade star in B. That was really, really funny.
yeah.
And I assume the fact that she's filming in Delhi is you don't film in Delhi, right? Like that
Right.
already kind of marks you as a not
Yeah.
top tier person. But I thought she was great.
I did too, and I would like to see more of her because I don't think
Hmm.
she's been doing a lot. She did some streaming series called
Hmm.
Mentalhood, but I've never
Yeah, I
seen
haven't
it.
seen it.
So I have no idea. What did you think of Sarah?
Okay, this is mm, I am have not enjoyed her in the past. Sort of not enjoyed to sort of meh, she's there, she's okay. I really thought she was very good in this until they gave her a long, long set of speeches at the end. And those I was not as convinced by. And I'm
Mhm.
not sure if it was the script or if it was her or if just sort of where those fell in the film or what. So I was really on board with her. I really liked what she was doing as this, shockingly young widow,
Mhm.
which is a fascinating role to have in an Indian production, right? And or
Mhm.
in Indian society that's being depicted even as fictitious as this one. The way she was hovering around the police was really interesting. I just thought she did a great job, but then when they really gave her a ton of text all at once, she lost me. But again, I'm not sure it's her fault. What did you think?
Same. I thought she was fine in all of the like scenes in the club and everything, the kind of lighter. I totally bought her. I totally
Yeah.
believed her as this socialite widow called Bambi. The name made me giggle multiple times. I really liked her in those scenes. I liked her in the scenes with Vijay Varma also. The
Hmm.
only thing I will say about their pairing is that aren't they supposed to be like two kids who sort of like grew up together? And he
Yes,
looks way older than her.
he
So I
does.
was like, I don't buy that, but okay.
I mean that kind of I feel like that tracks well enough for a woman in that social setting, and then a man who has
Mm,
sort of left it for a while, right? They keep
right.
emphasizing how he's been off in Calcutta. So she's obviously much more vain
Yeah.
than he is. But of course she has to be because she's a young woman and she's a widow. My God. Like
Right.
yeah.
So I liked her in those bits, like I liked her in the pool.
Hmm.
I felt like she held her own, not entirely, but somewhat in her scenes with Vijay Varma. He's still like far,
He's
far
better.
superior to
Yeah.
her. So,
Yeah.
um, but then when she had that like big outburst, I was like, oh God. It very much
Yeah.
had shades of, I don't know if you've seen Love Ajkal 2. It was horrible.
Yeah.
And she had that scene in it that was memed and panned throughout the Tum mujhe tang karne lage ho. Oh my God. It very much reminded me of that. So she was very bad in that scene. The 1%, at that point, I started wishing that they had cast Kiara Advani instead, because I could totally see Kiara Advani
Mm,
pulling this like kind of like privileged, bubblicious person off. But Kiara's big outburst in Jug Jug Jio really impressed
was
me.
really good. Yeah.
She really held her own against Varun Dhawan, who is very good in those explosive scenes as it
Yeah.
is. And then
Yeah.
I had also liked Kiara in Satya Prem Ki Katha, where she also had this big, like Kiara does those
Mm,
big emotional outbursts, throwing everything at the wall kind of scenes really
mm,
well. And so
mm.
that's where I was kind of like, I would have rather seen Kiara and Sarah in this scene. So at that moment, she completely lost me at that point.
I I wonder, not to get too far into Nepo baby conversation, but if she can't convince us of a spoiled, privileged person, then what is she even doing on camera, right? She,
Right.
if a film royalty person can't carry this off, then there's
Yeah,
no hope for her. So in some ways, I feel like, well, girl, if you can't do this, like this should be in
yeah.
you. Just stop acting. Just be yourself, maybe. Not to
Right.
say that I think she's a spoiled brat. I have no idea, but she should
Right.
be able to portray this particular world, especially the sort of Delhi connection, right? Since
Yeah.
the Pataudis are in
Like the
that area.
Pataudis.
So I feel like there's some, and I'm sure there's interesting nuances between Delhi spoiled brat and Bombay spoiled brat,
Oh, for
right?
sure.
So and
100%.
if we think of her as being sort of a would have gone to school with Aisha,
Mhm.
you know, that's kind of interesting to think about. But I don't know. I really and I liked that she had one of the challenges of murder mysteries is how do you get if you're not going to focus primarily on the police, is how do you
Mm.
get normal people involved enough to carry the plot along and have clues reveal themselves and stuff like that. That's a real challenge because obviously in real life, you don't get civilians just tagging along on
Right.
murder investigations, I assume. I hope never to find out. But but I thought that that character being accustomed to getting whatever she wants
Mm,
made sense, that she just sort of floats along next to the police and is sort of pretending to be kind of helpful, like getting tea and stuff, but then really she's eavesdropping and like, oh, I'll go leap over somebody's security wall at their house and things like that. Like that, of
right.
course, she's used to getting what she wants and just doing whatever, which they establish in that opening scene at the party where she's, everything's going crazy and she's dancing with one of the
Yeah.
uncles and everything. So that worked really well for me. And I thought that
Mm.
character was fun to be sort of our into the murder and following, because I think we kind of follow her more than we follow Vijay Varma's character, even
Oh
though
yeah, for
they have
sure.
basically equal screen time, I would say, but she's the one that is being nosy and excitable. And also,
She's
this has
kind of
nothing,
interested and driven to find out what's going on, as opposed
yeah,
to Vijay Verma, where he's kind of like, okay, do your thing.
this has nothing to do with anything, but I just want to comment. I really loved her hair in this movie.
Oh, did you?
That's like it's long, but it's not like super long. Like that sort of
Right.
seemed like an attainable kind of long, long, not too fussy hairstyle. I don't know. I was like, oh, I want to grow my hair out and have it be like, have it be like a 30-year-old Bollywood star's hair. Yeah, that's not going to happen. But
Nice.
um, let's talk about Pankaj Tripathi.
Ooh, before we close out the Sarah
Yes,
conversation, I just want you to know that she took acting tips from her grandma Sharmila for this role. Just FYI. I was like, very cool. Good for you.
I'm not going to say that I can see the influence, but I can see her grandma having done a role like this,
Yeah, much better. But yeah.
right? If you can imagine, Tisri Manzil, for example, being kind of updated, like
Yeah.
yeah. Wait, she's not in Tisri Manzil. What is she in that
No,
I'm thinking of?
but she's done those kind of like roles, and then I can imagine her as the aging the diva as well. I can also
Mm-hmm.
imagine her as the eccentric older lady, the cookie or whatever, cocktail cookie or
Mm-hmm.
whatever her name was. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can imagine her in all sorts of roles in that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, more projects for Sharmila if she wants them.
I
Please,
know. I
please do,
want her to
please.
be in more things, all the things.
Okay,
Okay, Pankaj
Pankaj.
Tripathi.
Was he nuanced and great, or was he sleepwalking? I don't know, but I liked it, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. I feel like I have seen the same Pankaj Tripathi
Yes.
role
Yes.
100 million
Yes.
times, the same delivery, the same
Yes.
everything. I at this point, I'm kind of like, boy, I like you, but please do something different. You have
But
a formidable talent. Use
yeah,
it.
I have his filmography open in front of me right now. I can't tell you which of the films it is where I feel like I've seen him do exactly this. So maybe there were five notable traits going on here, and I've seen each of them in something else or whatever. And I'm not meaning to imply that I think he's doing that on purpose. I don't think he's a lazy actor, really. But this was so familiar to me. And it's
He
kind
was
of
so
bothering me,
typecast.
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, he's so
maybe.
typecast at this point. It's like it's gotten to the point where if I see Pankaj Tripathi in a movie, I'm like not excited anymore. Where at one time I would have been very excited because like I adore him. But I've gotten to the point where I was like, did we need Pankaj Tripathi in this? I mean, because if he's not going to do something else, like you can play all kinds of detectives. You don't have to play this nice, avuncular, wise, sweet kind of a person. You don't have to put on that persona all the time. You could be a jerk. You could be, you could be all kinds of things. And if you're not going to do anything else and you're just going to play this uncle type of like sweet teddy bear uncle person, then I would rather see someone else. I would rather see Nawaz. Can you imagine Nawaz would be so good in this role? I
Yeah,
would
that would have
rather
been
see,
fun.
yeah, like Nawaz, or I don't know, some other like uncle person who does these. What is that guy whom I saw in Patal Lok? I keep forgetting his name.
I
The
don't know.
detective from Patal Lok.
Hmm.
He was in Jane Jan as well. He was a murderer in Jane Jan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I forget his
Ajay,
name. That dude.
yeah. Why are
So
we
like
blanking on him?
he could
Yeah,
have
we know
been
who
in
you
it.
mean.
I
Yeah.
mean, so I'm just kind of like at this point, please do something different. And if you don't want to do
Mm.
something different, then I don't want to see you. I'm just a little bored.
Maybe it's this way in the book, since we don't know. But I mean, I didn't mind. I was just really struck almost from like his second scene onward. I was like, oh, we know that. But this is interesting, right? Because again, we all love different formulas, and
Yeah.
we see a lot of people play basically the same
Oh yeah.
thing over and over again. Why is this one standing out to me so much? And I don't know why. And that's not really fair. But we know he can be so good. So getting him to be more challenged maybe would be great. But maybe this was a huge challenge for him somehow. I doubt it. It seemed like exactly, so familiar,
I
but
I feel like that is what the frustration is though, is that we know that he's very talented and he can do something
mm,
really cool and he can knock our pants off and he's not doing that. And
mm,
I think that's where we're annoyed. I think sometimes we tend to give more leeway and more benefit of doubt to people that we know have no range
it's
or that
true.
we know cannot act
Yeah.
because we're like, well, they're doing the best they can and
Yeah. The
they're
bar is
funny or
higher.
whatever.
The bar
Yeah,
is
the
higher
bar
for
is
him.
higher with him. It's kind of
Yeah.
like we already have so many Nepo people sleepwalking through every single role. If even the talented people are going to start sleepwalking through the same typecast roles, then it's like, okay, then where's the fun in anything, you know?
I was looking at his filmography and, kind of reading how long he was working before most of us paid any attention to him. And like, he's in Bunty or Bubbly, for example. I couldn't place him. I've seen that movie a million times. I have no idea where he appears. He's just
I
very
don't
briefly
remember.
in it, for example. And I do mean the first one, not the second one, although
Right.
he's in that too. Um, but he's really only been doing lots of stuff in any kind of way where we notice him for a little over 10 years. So
Hmm.
for in 10, 12 years to already have some of us be like, this again, like I feel for him. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking of someone like, for example, so this won't mean as much to you, I know, but like these uncle actors from the 70s and 80s who I love so much, like Prawn and Iftikhar.
Mm,
They Iftikhar in particular does the same thing over and over again, but it's a smaller role than
right.
this is. But someone like Prawn. Now I know Prawn obviously had a much different arc to his career, but he does a lot of these sort of
He does.
um crusty around the edges, but actually good-hearted older generation. He does a million of those, but it's always delightful, even though I'm not going to say it's quite copy paste. It's pretty close, right? Some of those. So like maybe just the trappings around it make me enjoy it more. But this was just like I very much enjoyed it. But he in particular, I have forgotten since I saw this film 3 days ago.
I think one big difference though in what you're saying is that like I know what you're saying, but in those movies, Iftikhar or Pran or Prem Chopra or any of those people were
Hmm.
never the main person.
That's
You
true.
had the
That's
likes of
true.
Amitabh
Yeah.
Bachchan who was the
Yeah.
hero, and so
Yeah.
he was doing all the things, and so they could do their usual like schlocky stuff. Here, we don't
Mm,
have any other bigwig that's really going to bring it. We have Sara
distracting.
Ali Khan. If she's
Yeah.
the if she's the headliner, then we really need the supporting people to like beef it up a little. So, I think if this movie or if there was some movie where he's kind of just like phoning it in or whatever, but there's some like big names in there and they're
Yeah.
doing what they're supposed to, we probably wouldn't mind Pankaj Tripathi doing what he is as much.
I think the role I'm about to mention is different, but I really enjoyed him, for example, in Mimi, where he is a
Mm.
little bit more of a secondary character. And so, and he's not doing the same thing there as he's doing here, as I recall. But, yeah, maybe we want him as very top of the second tier of characters.
Yeah.
So he's balanced out a little bit. And
I
I
just
am
want him to
glad.
show some temper. I want
Yeah.
him to show a temper and I want him to have a spark and be a little bit more masala because he's just
Oh,
playing this nice, sweet uncle all the time and it's boring.
when I look at his filmography, there's so much of his that I haven't seen. So,
Mm,
maybe he's doing those things and things we haven't seen. But yeah, this was a little
yeah.
bit of a pleasant yawn or something
Yeah.
like
It
that.
was a pleasant yawn.
Who else in the cast do we want to discuss?
Oh, I like Tiska Chopra.
Yeah.
She was very enjoyable. She was so bitchy.
Yeah.
I will say that the fillers were very distracting. It made it sometimes hard to understand what she was saying.
But that seems
Um,
right for that character, doesn't
It
it?
seems right. Yeah, it's perfect for the
Hmm.
character. But she
Hmm.
was really good. I like the bitchiness that she brought to the role and like, the whispering about like, I've already lost like so many kgs or pounds or whatever, but like Cookie, no, because of the
I
it's
I really
like
loved her character, and that was actually one of the people I was suspicious of from the get-go, just because she
yeah,
was so um toxic. That's a toxic person, right? But
yeah.
that's familiar and relatable. I was looking at something on Twitter yesterday and was reminded of a tweet that I saw that said something like, I'm not gossiping, I'm storytelling like our noble ancestors.
Right.
And gossip is one of those things that is in a lot of cultures very gendered. Like
Yeah.
men don't get smeared with the label of gossip nearly as much as women. So I was thinking about that with
Although in my
her.
experience, they're the biggest
Of
gossipers.
course,
They're
it's
the
pretty
worst.
human to gossip, to share information about other people in ways that is not always pleasant. So yeah, I liked I liked her. But that was the right amount of her. Also, I thought I didn't need
Yes.
any more. And then kind of when her arc rises towards the end and you find out some more things, I thought she did a good job with that. And that scene where she's gossiping very much about a particular character who then overhears and she doesn't know because her back is turned. You're like, ooh,
Hmm.
that was juicy. And she had it coming and it was nicely done, I thought.
Yeah. I found that guy very funny. Was it Devin Pojani, the guy who plays the manager of the
Yeah.
gym, and
Yeah.
he's like he keeps making these incredibly horrible, like elitist comments, and it's like and when Pankaj Tripathi is being sarcastic, and he's like, "Oh, is that so? That's interesting, or that's good," and he's like, "I know." He made me laugh so hard.
Was there anything in this that you wish had been significantly different other than maybe Pankaj Tripathi's characterization?
So the main thing I wish after watching this, I actually wish that this had been a show instead of a movie.
Oh, sure.
Because even though it was a longish movie, it was like 2.5 hours, I think, that I
Mhm.
watched it. And there were no songs in it, so that was great. I really wish that they had actually made this as like a streaming show, like just like 10 episodes or something like that.
Mm,
Because then we would have gotten more backstory into the characters. We would have gotten to see a bit more about them. For example, like Dimple's character, she came, I thought she had a significant role, she didn't,
she
and she
didn't.
just like
Yeah.
vanished, and then we
Yeah.
never heard from her again. So if this had been a streaming show, I think I would have enjoyed it more because I really enjoyed the world building and I
Yeah.
wanted to learn more about them.
In
um
particular, I wanted to know more about Vijay Varma's parents because they get quite a bit of
yeah.
time right at the beginning, and then they don't really they reappear a little, but not significantly. And then also the murder victim, I think knowing a little more about him, they tell us more as the film goes on, but like a little more about him maybe would have been good. And then also about Tiska Chopra's son, the drug
Yeah.
addict, that would have also been good, I think, because then they kind of tie him to another character in a way that I felt was a little rushed. But yeah, I would have like a 6 or 8 episode miniseries would have also been quite good for this, I think.
But then I was thinking about it and I was like, I never felt like I didn't know enough about the characters
No,
from Dil
it's true.
Dhadakne Though. But
Yeah.
Dil Dhadakne Though was also a movie and I felt like I got the right amount of
Mm.
everyone. So it can be done,
There's
but
more
maybe
people in this.
there's more people.
I think
Yeah,
there or there
and
it's
there's a mystery
important.
happening.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
different kind of set of
But I
information you need to
I
get out.
definitely felt like I wanted more because it was so juicy and
Mhm.
was enjoying that glimpse into that world and I was like I wanted to know more about their like
And, like,
shenanigans.
give Charisma's actor character a song sequence, like, the sequence
Yeah.
they do get when you see her on set, it's very funny and very well done, I thought,
Yeah.
but I could have used a little more of that.
And that actually made me wonder, like, because they call her like a B grade heroine of C grade films or something. So does she mostly do like these horror movies, like these Ramsey type of things, or
That's
where
what
she's
I'm
like a femme
assuming,
fatale?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I
With like the
wonder.
blood. I love that scene where she starts walking and then she stands behind the fan, does the hair thing, and then she walks over. That was so classic.
I also really loved it, so this is a mini spoiler. As
Mm.
I understand it, she does not win the election to be the president of the club, correct? She loses the election?
I don't remember that bit at all. I mean, I know she and Sanjay Kapoor were
Or
jockeying
maybe
for the
they never
top
even
spot.
have the
I don't
vote,
think they showed it.
but I love okay, so what I'm about to say is not as relevant, but let's imagine that she does lose. I feel like that also tracks because she's not quite the same class of people,
Mm,
right? Like money wise, she is, but background wise, she is not. And it's one
right.
of those things where rich people who have inherited over generations often feel very differently about new money and
Yeah.
feel that that's not enough and whatever. So I really liked that if they have her lose the election, that tracks to me.
Right. They also dislike people who work in the movies.
Yes.
And they also dislike single mothers, which she is. So
Yes.
she has a
Yes.
lot of like X's
Yeah.
against her.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Sanjay Kapoor has a lot of plus points in his favor.
Even though she's like everyone's kind of drooling over her and everything, like it's
Yeah,
okay for her to be sexy, but it's not okay for her to be in charge of the Royal Deli Club, and I was
for
like that
sure.
that stands as quite
Yeah.
accurate, I would imagine. So I
Hmm.
thought that was nice. But yeah, if you broke this into a series, you could do like a half hour on each of the people, right? And kind of rearrange the plot a little bit. That would be, and maybe they weren't offered a series, so
Yeah.
But
I even wanted to learn a little bit more about the manager character, the Devin
I
Bajani
know.
character. Like he was like when Pankaj Tripathi says to him, "So there's been a murder in your club," and he's like, "Oh, that's impossible. We don't allow that. That's literally not allowed in our club." And I was
So
like,
great. So great. Yeah.
it was the right amount of Devin Bajani, but it was so funny,
And the
and it
line
almost felt like he was trolling the cops.
the line that that role would have to walk in real life to have that
Yeah,
job, like you're with these insufferable people on whom you depend for money, and like one stray word could probably get you fired
yeah.
because they're powerful, not because you actually did anything wrong. And like that sounds like
I
that
would
sounds
totally read his
exhausting.
like tell-all diary. So have you watched White Lotus?
No.
Oh, I love White Lotus so much. I've seen both seasons. So I saw the first season, which is set in Hawaii, and I saw the
Mhm.
second season, which is set in Sicily. And they're both so good. And in both of those, so they're set on these like in these fancy the White Lotus hotel franchise. And so they're set in those like fictional White Lotus locations. So again, it's a similar thing where it's like everyone is in like one resort.
Mhm.
And in both seasons, they have the manager that has like a very important role. So in the first one, in the one that's set in Hawaii, the manager is this completely unhinged, drug fueled, like coke addled manager who's very like confrontational and so messy. And then the
Mm.
second one, the one set in Sicily, the manager's name is Valentina, and she is like, oh, such a good actress. She's an Italian actress, and you can see how much she judges every single person who walks through her resort. You can see the scorn on her face. I loved it. I used to like rewind some of the scenes in White Lotus too, just to see her expressions because they would make me laugh so much. Like you can tell she despises these people. So that can be a very juicy role as well. It
Mhm.
would be, can you imagine being friends with someone like that? All the stories they would tell you.
A plus gossip.
I would love it.
Yeah. How how does this fit into your assessment of sort of the last 5 years of murder mysteries that you've seen from India or in
I
Hindi
mean,
even specifically?
I will say I enjoyed it more than Niyat, which I thought was god awful. Did you
Right.
watch Niyat finally?
I turned it on and I got 5 minutes in and I just kept remembering all these criticisms I heard of it. And I was like, maybe not today. And but it is still on my list of things to
It was
try.
so bad. And
It's so
Ram
disappointing.
Kapoor truly was
Right.
like, he was just unwatchable. Like, you need a
Yeah.
drink just to get through Ram Kapoor's performance.
Hmm.
I enjoyed this way more than Niyat, which
Hmm.
I absolutely despise. But as murder mysteries go, I don't think this is anywhere as good as some of the streaming shows I've seen. My number one, even though it's a completely different setting, my number one would still be The Hard,
Sure.
that has Sonakshi, and it's they're investigating this like serial killer person. And I also really enjoyed Kalkut.
Right.
So those were excellent, and to the point that very memorable. I remember them. I was rooting for Sonakshi Sinha's character. She's a cop.
Yeah.
I was rooting for her throughout. It took so many like interesting issues. Like she plays like a very lower caste person, and there's so many little things in it that I didn't even catch, that when I caught them, I was like, oh no. Like every time Sonakshi Sinha enters her police station, there's a coworker of hers, and they don't make a big scene or big fuss about it. But every time she walks in, they light incense and they start praying like this. And every time she exits, they put it back. And I was like, it was so awful, but it
Mm,
was so great.
yeah.
And just the constant sexism that she faces doing her job. So, like, the Hard was just like spectacular. And I really liked Calcutta as well. So, murder mysteries wise, I mean, they're not murder mysteries so much as they're sort of like cop shows, but they are
Yeah.
investigating murder. So they're not in the Agatha
Right.
Christie or Poirot kind of mold, but they're in that other mold. But they were great. And then in this mold, there was Niyat, which was god awful. So I think this was okay, um, but it didn't really hit the mark for me so much.
I was thinking about, of course, Jane John, since
Mm,
it's Netflix and Karina and it's a mystery.
yeah.
You know, I gotta say, I would probably rewatch both of these, both this
Okay.
and Jane John. Like if someone, so my mom, for example, when I'm visiting with my mom, she loves murder mysteries too. So like I
Mm,
might actually watch both of these again with my mom.
mm,
But I don't need to watch either of them again,
right.
I would say. But I don't know, the worlds in both are interesting and
Yeah.
fun to dig into. Also, for me, one of the fun things about mysteries is watching them again, because then knowing what happens, like, where do I see the clues? That's when I'm actually better able to stack them up as like, how does the construction of this work? Um, so
Yeah.
I would like to revisit maybe someday for those, maybe, but again, I don't really need
Since
to,
you
but
like mysteries so much, I really have to recommend White Lotus to you. You will have
yeah,
such a hoot. They're
yeah.
tremendous amounts of fun. Do you like the Knives Out series, like the Knives Out movies?
I loved the first one.
Mm,
The second one I was kind of less into, but I did certainly enjoy it.
same. I thought that was fun, and I felt like these guys were trying to channel a little bit of a Knives
Sure.
Out sort of a
And
thing.
why
And
not? Right. Like
yeah,
it's super fun in itself, very obviously channeling Christie quite a
yeah.
bit. So
I will
um
say also about Knives Out though, like I've seen both, and again, not very memorable and not something that I would necessarily want to revisit.
mm,
But White Lotus is definitely something that stands up where you're like, I literally would restart my HBO subscription just to watch White Lotus and
nice,
then finish it. Like, you know, like
nice.
you get the free trial or whatever.
Yeah.
But I would highly recommend White Lotus to you. It's very, very satisfying,
Okay.
especially season two is even better than season one, which is a rarity. Usually the second season is more of a disappointment in these sorts of things. Do you want to watch more Karishma in other things?
Yes, but not so much that it's going to rocket some of her films over the existing things near the top of my list. And I would have to actually look at my list to decide what's the top of it. Because there's nothing like gnawing away at me as like, I need to watch this right now. Um, well, actually, no, Merry Christmas. I want to watch. That's been on my,
Ah,
ever since it came, finally was released on Netflix. I shouldn't say finally. It, came out on Netflix. I want to see it because it did not play anywhere near here. Um, and Donkey, I still haven't seen Donkey.
hmm,
So once I get those done, but yeah, charisma is certainly, I feel like my sort of self-education project about Hindi cinema definitely is a gap for her. Like I need to know more about her, and doing a bit of even just reading her biography on Wikipedia is, I mean, the amount of films she did in such a short time is
yeah.
stunning. She is just 1 month younger than I am. So like I feel like
Oh,
kind of thinking about being her age at that time and doing all that work is astounding to me. Like I was bubbling along as a freshman in college and she's making 8 films. Like what?
yeah. She
Very
started
different.
so early because aren't Karishma Kapoor and Preeti Zinta the same age?
I think so,
But
basically.
Preeti
Yeah.
Zinta feels like a younger generation. Like in my brain, I slot Preeti Zinta with Kareena Kapoor. But
Mm,
I think age-wise, she's actually
probably,
Karishma's
I
age.
would
But that's because
assume.
Karishma started working when she was like 16 or something. Like
Yeah.
when she did Prem Kedi.
Yeah. Yeah. I do want to see more of her. And I feel like okay, Preeti Zinta is just like half a year younger than Charisma, but yeah,
Okay.
so basically the same age. So yeah, I hope that Charisma Kapoor is one of those people who is getting the type and amount of work that she wants. Um, and I don't, for example, I don't feel like I see people going, I miss her, the way they do about Madhuri, for example.
Yeah.
Um, but I hope that that's okay with Charisma and she's doing what she wants to do.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I wouldn't have enough information to even guess about her career aspirations at this moment, but hopefully she's happy. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would love to.
Karishma was definitely one of those like 90s heroines that everyone enjoyed, but not necessarily. I don't think I ever met someone who was like a gigantic like Karishma fan,
Sure.
I think the 90s heroines were so strong and there was such a big category, like they were so good. And
Mm,
so it was kind of like it was harder to stand out in that era because like okay, there's Karishma, but like Madhuri is ruling the roost. Devi's still doing films. You
yeah.
have Juhi Chawla. So
Yeah.
it's like you get through Devi, Madhuri, Juhi Chawla, and then you have the
Yeah.
Karishmas and the Ravinas and the Urmilas, and they're all sort of jostling for the same parts. And then Preeti enters the scene and Karina, and there's some overlap a little bit. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like it was kind of a crowded time actually.
Mm, mm,
Oh, there was Kajol.
right. Right.
So it was
And
like a
even
sort of a
even being a
crowded
really
time.
good dancer isn't going to set you apart because there are already several really strong dancers. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Like today, if if Karishma worked in the films today, she would be hailed as like a phenomenal dancer. But
Mm,
back then, it's like she wasn't even considered as good as like say Urmila. Urmila was considered good, but Urmila was still
interesting.
not as considered as great as Madhuri. So
Yeah.
there was such a pecking order in terms of like, well, yeah, you're good, but are you as good as Urmila? No. Is Urmila as good as Madhuri? No. So it was I find it so funny that during that era, everyone used to say that Juhi Chawla was such a terrible dancer, which she is, to be fair. But now she would be considered so great. Okay, did you have any closing thoughts about this? Is
I,
there
I
any
don't,
Homi Jania movie you really like?
yeah, I think I've liked all, let me just quickly look. I believe I've liked all, yeah, so being Cyrus, I like Cocktail,
Mm,
I like Finding Fanny, I liked, I will note, I did see that on a plane, if I recall, and it was a
mm,
perfectly good time pass. Um, Ungrazing Medium, I think is good.
mhm.
So yeah, I have not seen this thing called My Choice, which is a short film.
I've
Um,
not seen it
and I
either.
have not seen, oh, he was the producer of Rabta, which is a god awful movie,
All right.
but I don't really hold him responsible for that particularly. So yeah, I think I like him. Um, Again, I don't sit around going, I wish he would do more things, but I
Right.
have liked what I've seen. I do want to say Cocktail is one of those films that I need to rewatch because it was
Mm.
so talked about when it came out. And I'm really curious about how we would feel it has held up.
I
Even if you
remember
kind of put
Cocktail.
aside the stardom of Deepika, like that's obviously you have to kind of
Yeah.
separate that because she was not then the star that she is now, although she was obviously well on her way. But I would like to watch it again.
Cocktail was one of those movies that I liked it until I absolutely hated it.
Interesting. Okay.
For its message at the end
Sure.
where they were kind of
Sure.
like, ugh,
Yeah.
it went into like 80s mode with like Izzat and all of that crap. Like they
Yeah.
didn't actually say Izzat, but they didn't have to. But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Um,
If I have one final question for you,
mm,
if you had to have lunch with one of the characters from Murder Mubarak, who would you have lunch with?
100% Dimple Kapadia, 100%. I want to know more about her cocktails, her cocktail recipes.
Sounds
And
terrible.
I just really want all the juicy gossip though. I want her to tell me all about what Tiska Chopra is up to and Sarah is up to and all the people are
Hmm.
up to. So she would definitely be my number one. I would actually just be friends with her in real life because she's so like kooky and weird.
Yeah.
I just like trail along with her everywhere and get her to tell me all the things. Because she knows a lot of stuff
Yeah.
behind that eccentric facade. That's a sharp brain there.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, there's a grandma that we didn't talk about
Ah, the
who
one
is
that
one of,
put her dentures in.
yeah, who's a bit of an observer who I think also would have a lot of, she seems to be kind of a satellite. She's not as involved, but she would be fun. And then also those two trainers from the gym,
Oh, I like them.
they know a lot.
Teja, Teja and Tinsuk or whatever. And there was a point where Devin Bajani, he's hysterical. At one point, Devin Bajani, he's like, "Oh yeah, they look the same. I keep confusing them." And Pankaj Tripathi looks at him. He goes, "One is from Karnataka and one is from Arunachal Pradesh." And he goes, "Exactly."
The
What?
Delhi Center, it's real, right?
I could
Yeah.
not stop giggling. I loved the interaction between Pankaj Tripathi and Devin Vajani. Like
Yeah.
it was hysterical. Devin Vajani is also in Donkey as like the
Ah,
immigration lawyer Patel.
okay.
He's hysterical in that too. More Devin
Okay.
Vajani, please.
All right.
Um, but yeah. And then parting thoughts because like I go to the gym a lot and there's that dude with he died with the barbell and everything and it reminded me of when I lived in New York and I was coming home from the gym and there was this like neighbor that I never spoke to. I saw him all the time, but like I never spoke to and we were like in the elevator together and coming back from the gym and he looks at me and he goes, "Going to the gym?" And I was like, "No, just got back." And he goes, "No good things come from going to the gym." And I was like, "Okay."
That's
And then
funny.
his floor opened and he got out, and I'm like,
Amazing.
"Cool."
Amazing line.
So when I saw that scene where he's like, ah, and he has the barbell, I was like, no good things come from going to the gym. My New York neighbor would have said that.
Correct.
Okay, well, I think that concludes this episode of Murder Mubarak. If you guys have seen it, it's streaming on Netflix. Let us know what you think and tell us whom you would go and have lunch and cocktails with. And had you figured out who the murderer was? Also, if you've seen any of the other murder things that we mentioned, then tell us about them. And if
Or
there's a murder,
others. Yeah.
yeah. And if there's something that you recommend that you think we haven't seen, then let us know.
Yeah.
Um, yep. Thank you for watching Filmy Ladies, and we'll see you next week with another episode. Bye.
Bye.
Try not to be murdered.
Do try.